What's poppin', y'all? Cash Money hasn't had a powerhouse artist in well over 10 years, but we still recognize them as one of, if not the greatest hip hop record label of all time. And when it comes to hip hop record labels with the strongest legacies, the same names keep popping up. Def Jam, founded by Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons, gave us LL Cool J and Public Enemy. Bad Boy by P. Diddy introduced B.I.G. and The Lox. Death Row from Dr. Dre early on, and Suge Knight unleashed Snoop Dogg along with Pac at the height of his fame. Then Rockefeller, started by Jay-Z, Dame Dash, brought about two rappers that would achieve billionaire status during their careers, Jay-Z and Kanye West. But what about the list of superstars that came out of Cash Money Records? Started by two brothers from New Orleans, Louisiana, Brian Williams, also known as Birdman or Baby, and Ronald Slim Williams, Cash Money Records became the home for huge household names like Lil Wayne, Drake, Nicki Minaj, most known recently, but also an era before them, Juvenile being one of those people. All rappers with multi-platinum selling albums under the Cash Money umbrella. And if you need any more evidence as to why Cash Money should be spoken of amongst the most famous hip-hop labels, look at their accumulated sales stats. In 2018, 2 decades after Cash Money got their first big distribution deal, a legendary, unprecedented deal at the time with Universal, in 1998, the label sold approximately 130 million albums and pulled over $1.8 billion in gross revenue, according to Forbes, really living up to their name. But along with Cash Money being a magnet for making cash, there's also a dark side to their story, a long history of their artists complaining about not getting paid properly and then leaving the label altogether. But you definitely won't hear the Cash Money bosses crying broke. In fact, when co-founder Birdman was interviewed on the podcast with Wallow, he had no problem letting it be known how much money he claims to be making off the master recordings from the past and present catalog of Cash Money artists. We license the music. I just started letting people sample my stuff. So yeah, it's a gang of ways you can make money with your masters. We generate 20 to 30 million a year just on our masters. With a long line of major names like DJ Khaled, Busta Rhymes, Bow Wow, Tyga, Tina Marie, Yo Gotti, Hot Boys, and Mac 10 coming and going from the company, how exactly did Cash Money Records go from being one of the major reasons why the South began taking over the rap industry in the late 90s to being a label with a reputation for rappers leaving out the back door? Growing up in the low-income Magnolia projects in the uptown New Orleans area, Baby and Slim were surrounded by many influences, negative and positive, or those that were negative that they turned into a positive. There was the crime side with the drug trade taking place. There was William's father, Johnny, who showed them what it meant to be a self-made entrepreneur who owned bars, grocery stores, and a laundromat. Then there was the local version of rap music exploding in the early 90s in and around New Orleans Magnolia projects called Bounce. Bounce was a style of party rap known for its call and responsive lyrics that often included raunchy or controversial themes. The sound of Bounce frequently included whistles, fast beats with synthesizers and drum machines, and rappers shouting out the names of neighborhoods. In 1991, while watching Bounce slowly grow in popularity, Baby and Slim believed that music was their way out of the streets, and they weren't going to wait for the music industry to come calling. They were going to make it happen themselves. With the name Cash Money Records, inspired by the Cash Money Brothers gang from the crime thriller movie New Jack City starring Wesley Snipes, a hand-drawn logo by Baby himself, and some business cards, Baby and Slim started recruiting the first wave of artists for Cash Money Records, right at home in New Orleans. The first signee was Kilo G, a 15-year-old whose debut album The Sleepwalker was sold out of the trunk of the brothers' car. Unlike the energetic and fun bounce music of the era, Kilo G was a gangster rapper with a harder edge, whose songs were more in the aggressive horrorcore vibe of early Ghetto Boys albums, with lyrics about murder delivered from a very cold perspective. The beats were also grim, produced by the New Orleans duo Big Ro and Goldfingers. As Cash Money Records' first big release, the Sleepwalker album by Kilo G didn't end up being the big success that they had hoped for, selling just a few thousand compact discs. It was clear that the music was much darker than the up-tempo party sounds coming from the bounce rap movement, but Kilo G would gain much more attention the second time around with his 1995 album, The Bloody City, with funkier, bouncier production this time from the polished producer Manny Fresh, and bigger guest appearances from Bun B and Pimp C from the duo UGK. But Kilo G's career and life were cut short in January of 1997 when he was shot and killed at a young age of 20. Another early signee to Cash Money Records was Lil Slim, a local bounce artist who was already pulling in sizable nightclub crowds before he signed to the label. Lil Slim first met up with Cash Money through a mutual friend named Ziggler the Wiggler, who was recruiting for Cash Money. Ziegler caught one of Lil Slim's performances and gave him the company's business card, which impressed Slim. This was around 1993 when Lil Slim was just getting out of high school and Kilo G's first album was the only Cash Money album released. This was so early on that Lil Slim's first album was actually recorded in Baby's kitchen because they didn't have their own designated studio yet. Then things got really exciting when New Orleans producer Mannie Fresh signed to Cash Money, proving to be a huge asset, producing many of their classics after he joined the label in '93. Mannie Fresh was already an established name coming from one of New Orleans' first rap groups called New York Incorporated. Mannie Fresh gave the sounds of Cash Money's music an edge by adding the local bounce beats to the street stories of their roster of rappers, creating their own gangsta bounce style that the label would be known for. It also helped that Mannie Fresh's work ethic was so strong that he went on to produce all the Cash Money records for a decade straight. The signing of Kilo G, Lil Slim, and Mannie Fresh led to a growing list of first-generation Cash Money Records artists, such as Pimp Daddy, Mr. Ivan, Miss T, Magnolia Shorty, three-member groups like PX, MX, WX, Projects Most Wanted, and UNLV, Uptown, Livin' Violent. Cash Money's co-founder Baby was also in a crew called B32, all from New Orleans. Once Mannie Fresh was in control of the Cash Money production workload, the first album during his extensive run was the debut album called Legalize Pass the Weed in 1993. Then when they followed that up with their second album, High Life, in 1994, which was even more successful. It also showcased the first of many Cash Money UGK collaborations, started a long-lasting relationship between the Texas duo UGK of Bun B and Pimp C and the Cash Money roster. Then there was a Cash Money discovery that would go on to revolutionize the label and become a key part of how they would reinvent themselves commercially in the future. Cash Money rapper Lil Slim wound up making that discovery of a rapper younger than anyone in the company, an 11-year-old kid from Lil Slim's neighborhood that he saw rapping at a block party the previous year and connected him with Cash Money in the summer of '91. This preteen who had been rapping since 8 years old was calling himself Shrimp Daddy, inspired by Cash Money's Pimp Daddy, but now the world knows him as Lil Wayne. While getting mentored by Baby after they met, the name Shrimp Daddy was changed to Baby D, with the D being short for Dwayne, which is his first name. Baby D was getting placed on Cash Money songs and also got put together with another young rapper only 2 years older than him, Lil Doogie, who eventually became BG. This duo was called the BGs, short for Baby Gangsters. But everything almost came to an end for Lil Wayne before he even had a chance to be called Lil Wayne. Back when he was still running with the name Baby D, Lil Wayne accidentally shot himself in 1994 at age 12. And the reports that it was an attempted self-deletion were after his mother insisted that he cut ties with all of his rap associates. And after surviving the gunshot wound, Lil Wayne would eventually drop out of high school altogether to focus on music full-time at age 14. The following year, Baby D and Lil Doogie would sign to Cash Money Records as the BGs in 1995. Cash Money Records wasn't the only independent hip-hop label in New Orleans at the time. They had a strong rivalry going on with Big Boy Records, established in 1992 by Charles Temple, Big Boy, Robert Big Rob Shaw, and producer Leroy Precise Edwards. In fact, it was actually Big Boy Records that was running the rap scene in New Orleans until Birdman's Cash Money and Master P's No Limit Records grew bigger. Although rapper, mogul, entrepreneur Master P was a native of New Orleans, No Limit Records label was actually started in the Bay Area of Richmond, California in 1991. After Master P inked a major distribution deal for his No Limit Records with Priority in 1995 and returned to New Orleans from the Bay Area, he started signing local talent along with his production group, Beats by the Pound. This created a clash between No Limit and Cash Money, turning into a full-on territorial feud set off by a breakout single from No Limit called I'm Bout It from True, or TRU, a group that included Master P, and the song featured the lady of No Limit, Mia X. True's hit I'm Bout It upset Cash Money because, as Mannie Fresh has stated, Cash Money's UNLV was first to put the phrase on record with their 1995 song I'm Bout It. But Master P and True seem to be credited for the catchphrase because of the added exposure they received from No Limit's deal with Priority. If that wasn't enough, No Limit Records even started signing talent from Cash Money's rival, Big Boy Records, particularly rapper Mystical. But the disses between No Limit and Cash Money seemed much more low-key than what was going on in the Cash Money versus Big Boy Records feud, mainly because the artists from Cash Money and No Limit had been running in the same circles and had previously collaborated with each other. But Mystical would have something to do with the Cash Money and Big Boy beef in a big way. In fact, Big Boy Records' biggest move was making a name for Mystical in the first place after the Rapid Rapper left producer KLC's Parkway Pumpin' label and signed with Big Boy Records in '94 and dropped a self-titled debut album. Big Boy connected Mystical with his mentor, the New Orleans legend Tim Smooth. Big Boy had its fair share of bounce artists like Sporty T and Partners in Crime that serviced the early 90s style of New Orleans rap. Big Boy also diversified their catalog with Fiend, who later signed to No Limit Records, G Slim, who had more of a West Coast G-Funk sound, and they also had success with the Ghetto Twins and Black Menace. The beef between Big Boy and Cash Money all seemed to start off with Partners in Crime, who had close ties to Cash Money, deciding to sign with Big Boy instead. Then Cash Money's group UNLV claimed the Partners in Crime copied their style and the conflict began. Kango Slim and Mr. Mina from Partners in Crime responding to ULV on their 1994 debut album PNC as things escalated. Each label's roster got frequently released diss tracks and threw lines about their rivals in what appeared to be normal songs. Even the youngest Cash Money members got in on the action, with Lil Wayne and BG's group the BGs recording the blatant diss F Big Boy for their debut album, True Story, featuring UNLV's Tech 9. Big Boy Records had a whole host of responses, a particularly notable one coming from Sporty T, who went at future Cash Money heavyweight Juvenile with the song Juvie, You Ain't No Soldier. Maybe the most infamous diss songs came from UNLV, more specifically group member Yellow Boy, who hit up Big Boy's well-known artist Mystical ruthlessly with the song Drag 'Em in the River, produced by Manny Fresh for their 96 album Uptown for Life. In fact, Drag 'Em in the River hit so hard that years later, many people found it strange that Mystical wound up signing to Cash Money Records, a label that previously wanted to ruin his career. Even though Mystical had graduated from Big Boy to Jive Records in 1995, he was still associated with a collective of Big Boy artists called the Boot Camp Clique, not the Brooklyn crew from Duck Down Records, that was composed of Big Boy artists. When Jive re-released Mystical's Big Boy album, Mind of Mystical, in 1995 with several new tracks, Mystical had responses for Cash Money's recent jabs with songs like Beware and Here I Go. Meanwhile, producer Manny Fresh continued to be a lethal weapon in Cash Money's arsenal. The beat he concocted for UNLV's Drag 'Em in the River proved to be a huge selling point when New Orleans local bounce music star Juvenile first heard it. After Juvenile left Warlock Records when he had a stressful situation over there with his debut album, the beat for Drag 'Em in the River made the rapper want to start putting in work with Manny Fresh, leading to his signing to Cash Money Records. Juvenile would even reuse the Drag 'Em in the River music for his 2001 song Set It Off. That beat was also part of UNLV's 1996 album Uptown for Life, where Manny Fresh's production took the group up a major notch. When it was all said and done, the Cash Money feud continued for the rest of Big Boy Records' run until the company folded in 1997, with only a mild attempt at relaunching in the mid-2000s. Cash Money Records remained standing, but soon it wasn't going to look the same, as its original roster began to disappear. Cash Money's second signee, Lil Slim, was the first to leave the label after having released 3 albums in 3 years with them. By 1995, Lil Slim began to realize that the money he was bringing home wasn't making sense compared to all the albums that he was selling. For anyone who may believe that Cash Money didn't start making money until they signed their gigantic deal with Universal Music Group for distribution, Lil Slim denies that idea by telling Forbes, "The first generation of Cash Money Records, people don't realize, were very, very big throughout the South. We would move between 40 to 50,000 units apiece. We had a very big fan base. The music was all over the radio, so it was being broadcast all throughout the South. My issue with Cash Money Records was that I'm dropping all these albums, but I'm not seeing any of the money that's being made on the music. I was just the first one to happen to make an issue out of it. The other artists didn't really know what the issue was because we all had our own business. But once I stepped away, I started seeing the other artists step away behind the same issue, and that was money." It only took the first few years for the label to be selling tens of thousands of copies per Cash Money Records release. Baby has even stated that he was making $1 million a month before the big Cash Money meeting with Universal in 1998. Unfortunately, when that deal was finalized, virtually none of the original Cash Money pioneer artists would be around for the celebration, most leaving because of financial complaints. To make matters worse, Pimp Daddy, Kilo G, and UNLV's Albert Yellow Boy Thomas all died violently by the mid-90s. Even that early work that Cash Money put out in the beginning is hard to find because it's mostly out of print and wasn't re-released by Cash Money, who cited sample clearance issues. Baby seemed to think that the conflict with those earlier artists that left had to do with them wanting to do their own thing, and his brother and business partner Slim's opinion was that they weren't focused on handling business, prioritizing drug use, to the point that Slim wanted to get rid of all of them and rebuild with new artists. It was actually the younger Cash Money members that managed to stick around, Baby D, who would later become Lil Wayne, and Lil Doogie, who would be known as BG, when they were rebranded as a supergroup with Juvenile and Turk called the Hot Boys. They would usher in the second wave of the Cash Money Records legacy. By the time 1997 rolled around, the super wealthy Williams brothers, Baby and Slim, had cleared out their company Cash Money Records of most of their foundational artists that they had started with in favor of a younger wave, such as Juvenile and the BGs, who collectively became Hot Boys with a fourth rapper named Turk. In fact, when Juvenile explained on Vlad TV that he walked away from a high-paying job to sign with Cash Money Records, when they signed me, they let all the artists on the label go and kept BG and Wayne. This the new Cash Money. I was coming from work. I had my hard hat on with me. Man, what kind of job do you got? I'm working on plants, backward and forth, working for on-site environmental. I do turnarounds. Yeah, I'm making a lot of money. Enough money that I don't want to quit my job to rap. Look, if you can pay me $2,000 a week, I'll quit my job. Matter of fact, I'll take a leave of absence right now and start going to the studio. He called me back the next morning and said it's a deal. Then the co-CEO Baby formed a duo with in-house producer Manny Fresh, calling themselves the Big Timers, with both of them rapping. Now, Cash Money's focus was predominantly on Hot Boys and Big Timers as they pushed to make the label more marketable on a national level. The goal of expansion and growth, turning Cash Money from an indie label to a major record company, was achieved when they signed a legendary deal with UMG in 1998 with the help of hip-hop advocate Wendy Day. Day's not-for-profit organization Rap Coalition had already helped Cash Money's competition Master P and his No Limit Records company secure a favorable deal with Priority Records, with No Limit getting to retain their master recording rights and getting 85% of all profits, which was pretty rare back then. Wendy Day also worked her magic with Cash Money and helped the growing company secure an unprecedented agreement with Universal, with the terms being Cash Money getting $30 million for Universal's distribution, a $3 million upfront advance, 85% of royalties, and total ownership of their masters. In return, Universal would only take a 7% distribution fee without owning any of Cash Money's catalog. Universal was excited about the massive amount of music Cash Money would be able to release through their system that the trade-off made sense to the massive corporation. Unfortunately, even Wendy Day, a woman who helped change the trajectory of Cash Money with this groundbreaking deal with Universal, ended up becoming yet another person complaining about not getting paid. There are two stories circulating around the media about what happened after Baby and Slim refused to pay Wendy Day's 5% finder's fee for helping them broker their Universal deal. The first story about these unfortunate events has been explained by author Dan Charnas, who wrote the rap industry book The Big Payback, who stated, Wendy Day ended up being very instrumental in huge deals that changed that balance of power in the music industry between the artist and the record company. Master P's deal for No Limit with Priority, she was instrumental in shepherding Eminem into the arms of Dr. Dre, but the biggest deal she ever did was Cash Money's deal with Universal. Wendy hadn't asked for any money until this point, but she was broke and decided that she needed to start asking for a finder's fee, which was 5% at the time. Reasonable, the same thing that a lawyer would charge. The problem was, when Cash Money got their money, they didn't pay Wendy Day. A short time later, two gunmen showed up in the offices of the lawyers for both Wendy Day and Cash Money saying, somebody didn't get paid, somebody better get paid. Wendy Day says it wasn't her, and at least one of her lawyers actually believes her. The other story has been told by Wendy Day herself, allegedly involving a friend, hip-hop artist Freddie Fox, who has been known to be a fearlessly intimidating figure. Wendy Day explained her unfortunate situation with Cash Money Records with Nah Right, saying, they just cut off communication. At one point, one of my artist friends bumped into Birdman and put a gun to his head and made him call and apologize to me, which he did. Birdman called me up and said, oh, your friend just pulled me out of Hot 97 and I'm here on the street, on my knees, and I want to apologize to you. I really didn't care about the apology. I wanted to know, why would somebody ish on someone that changed their life for the better? I just couldn't wrap my head around that, and he couldn't really give me a good answer. Maybe because he was a little scared himself based on the situation. He said to me, sue me. When I have to pay you, you'll get paid. He said it very nonchalantly and very matter-of-factly, and as time wore on, I saw that he didn't pay anybody. He didn't pay the t-shirt manufacturers, he didn't pay the Fruit of Islam for security, he didn't pay security guards for security, he didn't pay his staff, he didn't pay his office rent, they didn't pay anybody. It was actually Freddie Fox, and I think that he has spoken about it, so I don't think it's incriminating, she said. Plus, more than 7 years have passed. Ultimately, Wendy Day's experience with Cash Money Records led to her having to sue them in order to get her finder's fee. Day has both complimented their business savvy while also making it clear that she would never do business with them ever again. Cash Money Records was officially part of the Universal system as of June 18, 1998, but their first release, How You Love That Volume 2 by Big Timers, didn't do much to get things off to a good start. How You Love That Volume 2 is basically a repackaged version of the Big Timers' How You Love That Volume 1 that Cash Money had released earlier in the same year of 98. With lyrics that were much more basic and simpler than fans were accustomed to, and the public personas of Manny Fresh and Birdman not completely clarified for the public yet, it was hard for some listeners to know whether or not the Big Timers were just having fun or were trying to be taken seriously as a group. But all it took to heat things back up between Cash Money and Universal was the release of Juvenile's album 400 Degrees in October of 1998. This third album in Juvenile's career would turn into his best-selling album ever, going platinum 4 times over, and Juvie gaining further stardom with a nationwide hit with the single Ha, with Jay-Z even hopping on the remix and creating further appeal in other regions, particularly the Northeast. Mannie Fresh, who handled all of the music on Juvenile's blockbuster album 400 Degrees, was blown away when Jay-Z, who in '98 was arguably the biggest rapper at the moment, became the only non-Cash Money artist on 400 Degrees. Mannie Fresh remembered the situation by saying that it was an indication that he had just now arrived as a producer and was being recognized outside of the South. But Juvenile's third studio album, 400 Degrees, still had more gas in the tank when it followed the huge success of Ha with the song Back That Ass Up that was retitled as Back That Thang Up to get radio and television play. The massive club and airwave hit helped make Juvenile a household name and push 400 Degrees on to be not just Juvenile's highest selling project, but also Cash Money's biggest seller at the time as well. In the following year of '99, Cash Money proved that the success of 400 Degrees wasn't the only heat they were cooking up, with BG's album Chopper City in the Ghetto hit stores in 1999 April and went platinum, providing BG's largest hit to date with his famous song celebrating jewelry, Bling Bling, featuring Hot Boys and the Big Timers. Lil Wayne delivered the chorus, cementing the slang bling as another word for flashy jewels that became so much a part of pop culture that it was actually added to the Webster's Dictionary. The year of '99 also continued with more million or more selling albums for Cash Money Records, such as Hot Boys Guerrilla Warfare that was released in the summer, and blasted off 2 big singles, I Need a Hot Girl and We On Fire. If that wasn't enough, Lil Wayne would also come forth with his very first album as a soloist, The Block Is Hot, in fall of 1999, earning the same platinum success. Then Cash Money ended off the year with their 4th platinum plaque in 1999 with the release of Juvenile's follow-up to 400 Degrees, which was called The G Code. Big Timers weren't the Cash Money act that people were going for the greatest lyrics, like the constantly improving Lil Wayne was getting respect for. But when they broke through with their platinum album, I Got That Work, their formula for over-the-top bragging and speaker-shaking beats by Mannie Fresh was able to be received as a hit-making duo with huge songs like Get Your Roll On and Number One Stunna. This might have had a lot to do with audiences having more time to get to know Baby and Mannie Fresh's personalities than they had with their first Universal-backed project. Now the Big Timers had time to drill their vibe into the minds of Cash Money fans thanks to guest appearances on other hits from the label like I Need a Hot Girl and Bling Bling. People understood that their flashy charisma wasn't the gimmick of some one-hit wonders. The Big Timers were here to stay. As the new millennium begun, movie soundtracks started to become a place to showcase Cash Money's hit factory, with the Big Timers anthem Number One Stunna getting featured on the soundtrack to the Spike Lee directed stand-up comedy movie The Original Kings of Comedy in 2000. They even benefited from a music video featuring the film's star comedians Steve Harvey, D.L. Hughley, and Cedric the Entertainer. Later in 2000, Cash Money even premiered their own movie Bowler Blockin', with the Cash Money roster being joined by talent from outside of the camp like Nas, E40, UGK, 8Ball, and MJG. As 2001 was approaching, signs that Cash Money's reign was starting to slowly weaken were showing. Albums previously seemed to automatically go platinum, and now they were mostly just selling half as much and going gold. There was less excitement surrounding BG's Checkmate and Lil Wayne's Lights Out in late 2000, and their Hot Boys group member Turk even put out his debut album Young and Thuggin', and it was barely noticed compared to the releases of his group mates. The recognized West Coast rapper Mac 10, known for his work with Ice Cube, even released his one and only Cash Money album Bang or Ball, and the project didn't make much of an impact either. The following year of 2002 was basically glued together by the success of Baby, his Big Timers duo, and Lil Wayne's album 500 Degrees. During 2003, Cash Money Records would experience one of their biggest failures, the Chicago duo Boo and Gotti's album Perfect Timing. After appearing on the remix to Fiesta of fellow Chicago and R. Kelly, they secured a deal with Cash Money and even got brand name producers for Perfect Timing like R. Kelly himself, Kanye West, Mannie Fresh, and Jazzy Fop. But even 12 years after its 2003 release, Perfect Timing still hasn't even gotten gold. Among the worst flops during those early years of Cash Money Records' Universal deal, it took another album from the Big Timers to get Cash Money back on track with what ended up being their last album, Big Money Heavyweight, with first week sales of 116,000 copies in the US and being gold certified. The unexpected shock of 2003 for Cash Money fans was the return of Juvenile to the label after a nasty separation. The album Juvie the Great would be Juvenile's last for Cash Money though, and after it was released in December of 2003, it pulled in a platinum plaque and a big smash single with the anthem Slow Motion, Juvenile's first #1 hit on the Billboard charts. By the time Juvie released his next album, Reality Check, in 2006, it would be with a deal from Atlantic Records and on his own label, UTP. In 2004, Cash Money would lose another major puzzle piece to their big picture of success, their hard-working core producer Mannie Fresh, who spent a decade making the beats for nearly every Cash Money album. Like most of the departed roster, Mannie's dispute with Cash Money was money-related. He still ended 2004 with a bang by kicking out 2 last albums on the label before leaving, Lil Wayne's breakthrough project, The Carter, and his own debut solo album, The Mind of Mannie Fresh. Lil Wayne's 4th studio album in 2004, The Carter, would prove to be a monumental release. The Carter was Lil Wayne's transformation from a young teen rapper to a full-fledged, noteworthy MC capable of having his name thrown around with the greats. Whether he was showing his emotion on songs like I Miss My Dogs or his pure rapping ability on BM Jr., Lil Wayne had elevated from just being a team player in the Hot Boys to a one-man army. Now, 6 years after Cash Money reinvented itself with its backing from Universal, without its pioneering artists, it seemed like the company was going through a whole new remodeling phase all over again, with many of its key players feeling disgruntled and leaving. With producer and Big Timers member Mannie Fresh out of the picture, Cash Money Records lost the source of its sound and had to depend on riding the wave of Lil Wayne's superstardom. Wayne followed up his The Carter album about a year later in 2005 with a sequel, The Carter 2, gaining even more critical and commercial acclaim, making his goal of supremacy known by boldly calling himself the best rapper alive. Also in 2005, Cash Money Records would grow some new legs to support the company, with Lil Wayne launching his Young Money offshoot label, backed by Cash Money. Wayne pulled in some new talent under his wing, such as Currency, Mac Main, Raw Dizzy, and Scott Up members such as Nut the Kid, aka Kid Kid, and Gudda Gudda. As the decade of the 2000s was fading out, Lil Wayne would hit the height of his stardom in 2008 with the 3rd installment in his ongoing album series, the classic Carter 3, often regarded as his greatest album ever. The Carter 3 was one of the fastest selling albums in the US at the time, moving over 1 million copies in its very first week and debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart. By the time 2008 ended, the Carter 3 had sold nearly 3 million copies and achieved further chart success with 4 of its 5 singles, the international hit Lollipop, along with A Milli, Got Money, and Mrs. Officer, that all had a strong presence on the charts. Then, the next year in 2009, Lil Wayne and Birdman would end up being the only rappers actually putting albums out on Cash Money Records. Nobody from Wayne's original roster of Young Money artists ever released any albums on the label. Mac Main, Gudda Gudda, and T Street stuck around, but Currency went on to make his own millions as a do-it-yourself independent act, and Kid Kid got his name out there when rap star 50 Cent signed him in 2011 to the G-Unit imprint. Once again, it was time for Cash Money to start from scratch and rebuild itself, and that would largely be on the shoulders of Young Money's biggest discoveries, Drake and Nicki Minaj. Cash Money's franchise players, Mannie Fresh and Juvenile, weren't the only ones to leave Cash Money. Hot Boys members BG and Turk stepped away as well. Juvenile was having trust issues with Cash Money and problems with not getting paid that began to surface in 2001, which Juvenile has explained in 2012 by saying, "My reason is the same reason most artists leave their label. Money. When you put in that much work, you should be compensated for it. I'm #1 on this station, #1 on that station, so I checked the contracts and went back over the paperwork. I was naive in the beginning. I didn't want anybody telling me anything because, hey, you didn't help me get this situation and you're on the outside. I should have listened because they had me in a contract that I'd still be in. There was no future for me in the contract. So I went, well, damn. I'm working like a slave and I'm getting nothing. So I got an entertainment lawyer and found out Cash Money weren't who they said they were to me. One thing led to another and I said, pay me this and we're cool. They ain't pay us and we went to court. They lost in court. Simple as that. I had to do all that to get money that I earned. I kind of paved the way for all that you got going on right now. If you were going to pay anybody, me and Mannie should be the first 2 people the check was cut to. Mannie's still trying to get his money right now. It's crazy. If you notice the Young Money, Cash Money imprint, some of the stuff that needs to say Young Money don't stay Young Money. I know Baby and I know Ronald, talking about Slim. They ain't giving up power of their company. They don't care how big Wayne gets. They not giving up. If I didn't get it, he ain't getting it. Turk's complaints against Cash Money began bubbling up to the surface in 2001, and he parted ways from Cash Money after the Hot Boys dissolved. Unfortunately, Turk was incarcerated in 2005 for attempted murder and served practically 9 years in federal prison. Upon his release, he tragically lost his father, and to make matters worse, Turk felt isolated from Cash Money. In 2013, Turk provided a statement to All Hip Hop about his situation with them. "I've been calling, texting y'all, and you ain't received no callback. I'm through trying to make y'all look real. When my little brother got killed, I had to bury him out of my attorney fees money. And now it happened again with my daddy, and I've buried him by myself with no help from you so-called friends." Eventually, Turk felt exploited enough by Cash Money that he filed a lawsuit against them for $1.3 million over unpaid royalties for the solo and Hot Boys songs that he recorded for the label dating back to 1999. Turk ended up winning the suit by default because Cash Money failed to respond to it. But once both parties reached a settlement, Turk requested that the lawsuit be dismissed in June of 2015. In 2001, BG had similar complaints about financial struggles spanning over a decade, mismanagement of his career, and not being able to trust his Cash Money family. He left the label in 2001 after his album Checkmate, and BG reflected on the drama and Birdman's manipulative ways by stating, "I didn't know no better. I looked up to them and respected them. I felt like they wouldn't do me like that, but I was wrong. Baby calls himself the Birdman, but he wants to bird feed me. It's cool, you effed me over and I learned my lesson. It's time for me to move on." Years later, on November 3rd, 2009, BG was arrested in New Orleans, Louisiana after he was pulled over by police, and during a search of his vehicle, police apparently found 3 guns, 2 of which were reported as stolen. After dealing with his illegal carrying of weapons charge in court, on July 18, 2012, BG was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison for both gun possession as well as witness tampering. Mannie Fresh went from Cash Money's sole producer to fighting the company for royalties of the music he delivered over his many years of service. In 2012, Mannie Fresh responded to Vlad TV when asked about money issues with Cash Money. "And I wish it didn't have to be that way, but it's gotta be that way. Even prior to now and us speaking, they still selling music that's got my name on it, and as an artist, I'ma always want it. That's mine. That's earned. That's deserved. So, it's kind of crazy that we always go back and forth through this whole little me asking y'all to do something that y'all should want to do." When asked about mending fences with the label, Mannie responded, "I don't think so. I did think that at one time, but I feel like it won't ever be that, because I think there's a level of respect. You wouldn't have existed if I didn't do what I did." Not only did Mannie Fresh leave Cash Money around 2005, this would also be the year that the notorious natural disaster Hurricane Katrina ripped through the city of New Orleans, destroying mass amounts of property and taking lives. Birdman has stated that Katrina wiped out 20 of his houses and 50 of his cars. This pushed Birdman and his brother Slim to relocate to Miami and take their Cash Money empire with them. Lil Wayne also set up shop in Miami with his Cash Money supported label Young Money. All the ups and downs, lawsuits, and artist departures that Cash Money Records experienced weren't enough to dig the record label's grave, because they were still gearing up to discover and launch 2 of their biggest superstars ever. Canadian rapper Drake from Toronto and Trinidadian American rapper Nicki Minaj from Queens, who both signed to Cash Money in 2009. Technically, they were both under the Young Money imprint, but this also made them Cash Money artists. In fact, they were all calling themselves YMCMB, Young Money Cash Money Billionaires. There was a point in time when you could have called Drake the largest male rapper in the world, even now potentially, and Nicki Minaj the largest female rapper in the world, and it would be hard to argue with you. Within the first decade of Drake and Nicki Minaj signing to Cash Money, excluding EPs and joint collaboration projects, the pair released a combined total of 9 solo studio albums that were all platinum or better. All but 2 were multi-platinum. At a time when record sales were plunging across the board and online streaming via piracy was starting to become a larger form of music consumption than CDs. Along the way, Lil Wayne, Drake, and Nicki started to match their bosses' earning power. Between 2011 and 2018 alone, Drake pulled in around $257 million, Nicki Minaj hit the $135 million mark, and Lil Wayne grabbed up an impressive $145 million, with all 3 being beyond or relatively close to the earnings of the CEO Birdman, $156 million. In fact, when you include California's rapper Tyga, who was signed to the YMCMB conglomerate, and Baby's so-called king of R&B, Jacquees, from Decatur, Georgia, this revamped version of Cash Money Records between 2008 to 2018 became their most lucrative run of albums, putting up seemingly endless gold and platinum plaques, including Lil Wayne's The Carter 3, the Young Money compilation, We Are Young Money, Lil Wayne's Rebirth, which went gold, Drake's Thank Me Later, Lil Wayne's I Am Not a Human Being, Nicki Minaj's Pink Friday, Lil Wayne's The Carter 4, Drake's Take Care, Tyga, Rise of the Last King, Nicki Minaj, Pink Friday, Roman Reloaded, Lil Wayne's I Am Not a Human Being 2, Tyga's Hotel California, Drake, Nothing Was the Same, Nicki Minaj's The Pink Print, Drake, If You're Reading This It's Too Late, Drake and Future's What a Time to Be Alive, Drake's Views, Jacquees 4275, Drake's Scorpion, Nicki Minaj's Queen, and Lil Wayne's The Carter 5. But during Lil Wayne's struggle to release the 5th installment in his The Carter series, along with complaints from his Young Money artists not getting paid properly, Lil Wayne started going public about his frustrations with Cash Money Records over financial issues and his desire to pull away from the company. On December 4, 2014, he revealed the real problems behind the release of The Carter 5. To all my fans, I want you to know that my album won't and hasn't been released because Baby and Cash Money Records refused to release it. This is not my fault. I'm truly and deeply sorry to all my fans, but most of all to myself and my family for putting us in this situation. I want off this label and nothing to do with these people, but unfortunately it ain't that easy. I am a prisoner and so is my creativity. Again, I am truly sorry and I don't blame you if you're fed up with waiting for me in this album, but thank you. Lil Wayne's problems with Cash Money were even spilling over into his music, taking direct shots at the label on the song Coco. Who kept this ish together? Me, that's who. Who was there when y'all left us? Me, that's who. Cash Money is an army, I'm a one-man army. And if them coming for me, I'm going out like Tony. Now I don't want no problems, I just want my money. Ain't gotta hold no conversation or my luggage. Tell whoever's counting that I'm on 100. Birdman Jr. more like Ugly Duckling. Then ultimately in 2015, Lil Wayne hit Cash Money Records with a $51 million lawsuit, wanting his Cash Money contract discontinued, unpaid advances, rights to his catalog, money owed for the Carter 5, along with the rights to his Young Money artists as a separate entity. In 2018, Lil Wayne and Universal ended up settling, which stated that Lil Wayne was to be compensated over $10 million from previously failed payments, and Young Money's ownership would be transferred from Cash Money to Universal directly, along with Birdman's 49% ownership in Young Money getting transferred to Wayne. Then almost 2 years later, in June of 2020, Lil Wayne, through the Young Money company name, sold off his master recordings in a settlement from Republic Records to its overhead company, Universal Music Group, for $100 million, which included his masters as a solo artist and the whole Young Money Entertainment catalog, including Nicki Minaj, Drake, Tyga, and the rest of the roster. For example, this means that before the end of 2020, Universal owned each of Drake's earlier studio albums, from Thank Me Later to Scorpion, that were Young Money Cash Money projects, with the rest of Drake's music after that coming out under Drake's own OVO sound imprint, with his partnership with the Universal-owned label Republic Records. Nicki Minaj hasn't managed to leave the label yet, but Tyga had to push hard to part ways when he began having issues in 2014 when trying to release his project, The Gold Album. Tyga discussed his problems with Cash Money openly on Twitter on October 10, 2014, when he posted that The Gold Album was finished, but Cash Money wasn't releasing any of his music at the time. Tyga even threatened to leak the album himself. Then during an interview with Vibe, Tyga said, "Nah, I tend to distance myself from them. Yeah, I'm trying to go independent. I don't really get along with Drake. I don't really get along with Nicki. I don't like Drake as a person. He's just fake to me. I like his music. You know what I'm saying? I think his music is good, but we're all different people. We were forced together, and it was kind of like we were forcing relationships together. It is what it is. I think being signed to Young Money, everybody felt like they had to force a relationship because Wayne put us together. At the end of the day, the reason why I signed to Young Money is because of Wayne and my relationship with him. I try to be cool with everybody, but sometimes everybody just has different personalities, motives, and different characters. When you realize that, you realize that's not a place where you want to continue to grow." Drake is no longer an artist in the Young Money Cash Money system, and he has since signed a blockbuster deal with Universal for what some say is over $400 million. But before Drake fulfilled his contractual agreements, a lawsuit took place on his behalf against Cash Money Records. According to The Hollywood Reporter, it was Aspire Music Group, led by Jazz Prince and co-founded by Lil Wayne's former manager, Cortez Bryant, who sued Cash Money because the label was apparently withholding Drake royalties. Aspire claims that in 2008, it signed an exclusive recording agreement with Drake, then entered into an agreement in June of 2009 with Cash Money Records that would allow Drake to record for the label in exchange for 1/3 of the net profits of his first 6 albums and 1/3 of the copyrights of his master recordings for those same albums, as well as monthly accounting and payments. As laid out in court documents, those albums are 2009 So Far Gone, 2010 Thank Me Later, 2011 Take Care, 2013 Nothing Was the Same, 2015 If You're Reading This It's Too Late, and 2016's Views. But Cash Money reportedly never paid up, and with Aspire not being clear on how much was owed, Aspire asked the court to audit Cash Money's books. The situation apparently got worse when Cash Money filed a countersuit against Aspire, but in 2019, both parties agreed to drop the claims against one another, and it was all dismissed. The long list of other Cash Money artists that came and left is very long, ranging from Busta Rhymes, DJ Khaled, whether it was close affiliations or even outright signings. Limp Bizkit, The Dog Pound, Young Buck, Gilly the Kid, who had much to say, Jay Sean, Lil Mo, Tina Marie, Kiki Wyatt, and TQ. Having lost a majority of their largest legacy artists, will having such a tarnished reputation from their past dealings make it difficult for Cash Money Records to start all over and find the next stars of the future, or is that something that they're not as interested in anymore? The most recent attempts at signing groups was with the now departed Rich Homie Quan and Young Thug, which was going very, very well, although they ended up signing to different record labels and were already in their own deals. And then there was the attempt by Birdman in getting very close to signing star NBA Youngboy. But since then, we haven't really heard from Cash Money when it came to new artists and the newer generation.